The Burros of Berea is a conversational podcast. We study the Bible and we talk about it.
Not all of us are of the same faith, and one of us doesn't actually have a faith.
And that's wonderful. We all love one another, and we're going to continue to talk about these things.
The things we believe in and the things we believe about what we read in the Bible. Not all of these are necessarily true. Some of it is opinion and speculation. Thank you for
listening and speculating with us.
There you go. That was good. Yes.
You are listening to the Burros of Berea.
You are listening to Dr. Sam Frost Fridays. Well, welcome back to the Burros of Berea. I'm Rick Welch, and to my left is Big Daddy Carter.
Oh, yeah.
Behind the glass, Rocket Man Andy Bishop.
Cow.
To my right, Sarita the Edge Edgerton.
Hi.
Yeah, so by now you've heard the testimony of Dr. Sam Frost. We have him back in the studio for our special Dr. Sam Frost Fridays. It's going to be releasing, depending on how many hours we do this, there's going to be like over the next 8 weeks. Who knows? But whatever.
Listen, I got a ball game to get to.
Probably
so.
in every other, like toggle it with the Wednesdays or something.
Exactly, yeah. So Dr. Frost, thanks for being in the studio with us again.
Thank you for having me again.
Absolutely. Yeah,
After the last one.
You didn't forget to pick him up.
One thing, I didn't. And one thing that we have discovered, we both love Cracker Barrel.
Yes.
That is a great place to eat.
You couldn't eat there every day, though.
No, but it's really
Would
interesting.
your metabolism catch up with
Yeah.
you were talking about yesterday?
Well, I don't know.
The stomach might catch up with him.
Yeah, mine.
Can't eat there every day.
I'm trying to figure out, I'm trying to put on weight for the winter as we go into the summer.
I was like, but it's spring.
Well,
Start your training early. Get your training in early.
That's exactly it. He's getting an early start.
Yeah, and the bigger I get, the colder I get. And they always say it's the opposite, but I'm freezing to death. I guess it's because my skin is enlarged over my heart or over my enlarged heart. I don't know, whichever one.
First job I had, no, not first job I had, second job maybe I had when I moved to North Carolina was Cracker Barrel. I worked there for like a year. It's terrible.
Yeah.
Awful job. Awful job. Thankless. Tips are terrible.
Yeah.
And I tell you what, a good place to buy drugs.
Really?
Oh, absolutely. Anything wait staffers though. It's not because it's Cracker Barrel. It's because they're wait staff and line cooks, and that's where drugs come from.
It's in the dictionary. I've seen that.
When my mom got sick, it was when North Carolina was cracking down on giving pain meds, and she had cancer.
Yeah.
She had cancer. Like
It's
I'm like
ridiculous.
I'm like,
right
doctor,
now.
she's dying.
It is dumb.
Can she have some drugs to make her feel better? And I looked at her one day. I said, Mom, I'll go buy you.
We're going to get you to a Cracker Barrel.
And she goes, how do you know how to buy that? I was like, listen, I've waited tables for 15 years. I can go like
Sure.
that, and within an hour, I'll have you something.
Gonna get you a big old bag of weed. Yeah.
She refused to let me do that. But
Put the crack in Cracker Barrel.
Yeah.
It is ridiculous, though. Like, I understand the impulse, but it is ridiculous how far in the other direction they've gone with that stuff because people with legitimate need now.
Yes.
she had cancer all throughout her body, and they would not give
They have
her
no
enough
access.
drugs.
And they will look at you like you're a
until
crackhead.
we called
Yeah.
hospice, and then hospice would give her anything she wanted, but they didn't want to call hospice. But
That's
whatever.
brutal. That's
Yeah.
brutal.
Anyway,
Well, after we finished
Sorry.
that testimony, we sort of got to the end of this. And so today, Dr. Frost, I want to understand, much like your book, Why I Left Full Preterism, I want to hear the steps that you took as you began to leave and exit full preterism, and then also, obviously, the theology behind it and what changed in your mind because you were such, an ardent supporter and one of the leaders of the movement for almost a decade, I would say, right? Yeah. So this changed. So that's what I wanted to know. I want to hear from that. So I've heard a part of it, like where you got to John chapter 6 and something really stuck out at you. Can we start there?
Yeah. And I was, and they're trying, many of the full preterists today try to devalue my contribution or whatever to the movement as a whole from 2001 to 2010 when I left. So, but no, I was in it. You mentioned Beyond Creation Science, so I'm footnoted in that book, credited.
Yeah, Tim
with,
Martin.
a lot of stuff that's
He
in
sent
that
us a book. We're going to try to have him on the show eventually. I haven't got through all of his book yet.
I don't even know who
He's
that
from
is.
Montana, where they had the tornado on the
Is
mountains.
that a real place?
Montana?
The one I
Montana?
posted?
Yeah.
That was in where he lives?
Montana.
I didn't realize.
Oh, I don't know.
Montana.
That's where he lives. I'm just saying. Sorry to interrupt, but Tim
No.
Martin, he sent us Beyond Creation Science, his book.
Yeah.
I've started reading. I haven't finished it yet, but we are going to have him on the show this year, hopefully.
You know, a lot of Don Preston's book, and then Don still publishes one of my books. So Alan Bondar, I mean, all of these guys, Michael Miano's first book I wrote a blurb for, so they were all wanting me to write forwards and stuff to their book. Bondar's book I wrote a forward to. So I was very involved, very, very, my fingers were all in the pies, so to speak,
Sure.
into the movement. So I knew it backwards and forward. And I can sound just like one of them, convinced and convince you. If you didn't know any better, I could convince, go through all of their arguments and what it is that they used. And it certainly convinced me. But you have to read everything. So you can't just stay in a kind of a framework like that. You have to constantly challenge your own beliefs, and as I said last night, look for holes, and which are only going to tighten or strengthen your belief, or you've found a hole, and it needs to be sewn up. The one that I found couldn't be sewn up without an appeal to absurdity. For me, was argument of infinity. So full preterists believe that history as we know it now, so I use the phrase history as we know it, will go on for infinity. What we have around us, will never end. Because of his kingdom, there shall be no end.
Does that mean I don't have to paint?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Thank God.
Well, no, you'll have to paint, but eventually it'll have to be painted again, for infinity.
Well, then I still need to paint.
But you're not going to
Sorry.
you still
All
have to paint. And all of the evil that goes along with history as we know it remains forever. So it never goes away. It's never ultimately, in the traditional view, it's ultimately finally dealt with and removed.
And at one time you held to that belief?
That was a hard one.
Or you forced yourself to believe it?
Yeah, you kind of go along with some things you sweep under the rug because of what you think are the other major arguments that trump everything. So then you just sweep the other things under the rug. Every view does this.
Yeah, every view, absolutely.
Every
I
view's
agree.
got weaknesses and strengths,
problem
areas and stuff.
What is? Can you give like the verse, or maybe just like a Cliff Notes version of the verse that you're talking about that infers that
The kingdom with no end?
Yeah,
the kingdom with no one? Yeah.
Isaiah 6 would of his kingdom there shall be no end. Of the increase of his kingdom there shall be no end.
Yeah, of the
So the-
increase of his kingdom there
So
shall be
the
no end.
increase is for infinity. That's how they interpret it, even though Hebrew has no word for
Is there
infinity.
anything like right adjacent to that that's kind of pertinent or helpful with that? Because that's pretty vague for me.
Not really.
It's-
No,
It only
just kinda
takes
stands like that.
truthfully told, in every view, it only takes a one verse to create an entire theory from.
Sure.
So it is a vague verse that an entire theory is built upon, right?
Yeah.
And I'm sure there
And
are
it
more.
really doesn't mean that, because the increase in Hebrew is a noun. So the increase is like an addition to your studio here. There won't be any end to it. Once you add it, it's added. It's not going to be there. So it's not of the increasing, there shall be no end. It's the increase that's added to the kingdom. There won't be any end to that. So it's not referring to infinity at all. Hebrew doesn't have a word for infinity. There's no concept going on. That's Greek. There's nothing going on with any of that. So the idea that history just continues for infinity, as it now is, with everything that goes along with it, which runs into the problem of God knows all his people from beginning to end, and those written in the Lamb's Book of Life, or from beginning to end, to which you could add one more. So God knows all of his people, to which you could add one more. And God knows all of it, to which you can add one more. To God, for infinity. So he doesn't really know all of his people, to which you could add one more. Okay, now he knows
No, that's
all.
kind of, I mean,
to
that's,
which you could add one
but
more.
even that for me is a weak argument.
to which
because
you could add one more.
You're talking about an infinite God.
He's not infinite.
He's not.
So when we went
What
back
is
and
he?
began to go into what infinite means to the Greeks, and how the early church, namely Augustine, treated that as that God is eternal, not infinite.
Okay.
God's not ever expanding.
Right.
He learns nothing.
Right.
You can't add anything to it.
Right. But that is the definition of infinity.
Infinity is you can always add one more.
That's our Americanized
Well, no. Okay.
definition.
So let's say this. So everything that is happening is we are living and breathing and all within the construct of who God is.
Right.
Everything's happening within it.
Right.
It's very cyclical. It's never ending. Because he's eternal.
He's eternal,
Right.
not
But
infinite.
I think-
Infinite is a poor word used. There's twice in the King James, and it's not the meaning of the Hebrew that they translate, but they were using that word infinite. So in our 25-page paper that we came out with, technical and all of this, basically infinity apetus is it's unbounded. It's always increasing, always adding, and it never. Well, that's not the definition of God. God is contained, self-contained Trinity.
So it's like a bit of a definitions thing where
Yeah.
infinite is not all encompassing. Infinite is everything.
ever expanding.
It's chaos.
Ever
It's chaos.
Well,
A lot of
I think
Greeks look-
chaos is a stretch, but I like the
Well-
concept that there can always be there can always be more in there. Yeah, there can always be more. I guess that's an interesting way to look at it because it's not that there always is more or should be more, but there could always be more.
Mm-hmm.
There is always eternally room to add.
That's very philosophical, Andy.
It's very.
I'm
That's
feeling
a
it's
that's a
true.
good. I like that. I like.
I'd never
that
heard
view.
the distinction like that. So
That's an interesting
everlasting
distinction.
life is
I'm
within
I'm only reading from Augustine and the Greek philosophers, which I spend a great deal of amount of time in. So for them, it was an ever increasing or an ever adding too. So it is chaotic. That's the Greeks hated it because you couldn't formulate anything without it being expanded upon. So if we talk about numbers, so think of the biggest number that you could think of, to which you could add one more.
12.
So you never really come to
Listen, when I was
you
little,
never really come to an end of it.
right.
Google was the biggest number. Do you remember
Right, it
that?
was a Google.
It was
Yeah.
a Google.
I mean, they
You-
spelled it incorrectly, but this way's better.
Correct. So now it's a search engine which you can never have an end to because there's always increasing to it.
That's
It's
that's
infinity.
So you
Yeah.
never have a full knowledge of anything. There is no anything. So in like Aleph Null, which is the symbol for infinity, that set theory, there is no all for infinity. So God cannot know all. Infinity has no all. That would be a contained set. All is a set unit. So in mathematics, even they do these things symbolically. So in mathematics, we have to have a limit to be able to order and think. But in philosophy, which is very real, how far does space go?
I mean,
This
we
is
don't
mind-numbing.
know.
Very mind-numbing.
In fact, the James T. Webb is blowing the minds of the astrophysicists of today. It's breaking all of the laws. They're going to have to rewrite the textbooks.
of course,
It depends on who you
that's
talk
the
to.
nature of science, which is always falsification. That science is always loves when
Disproving
it breaks
itself.
its own rule.
Yeah.
That's the whole point of it. Is to continue to go out.
There is an ever increasing amount of people who are saying
That
is not
doesn't
what-
work with theology when you have a God
Are you
who
saying an
says
infinite
he's
number of
beginning and the
people?
end.
there is an ever increasing number of people, and it's becoming actually very popular again, which I just don't with the web, the
James Webb.
James
T.
Webb
Webb.
thing.
James T. Webb.
I mean, how you? But the Earth is flat. It's a dome. It's that whole right. It's becoming like
So
I
that's
know.
like a refresh thing.
like
That's
I-
there's a new.
Pretty safe.
I
It's
had
an
never
orb.
known anybody until about 6 or 7 months ago, and this lady started that I have been friends with for years, and she's now unfriended me because I kept pushing back on her. She has blocked me, which is fine, and
She
she
thinks
says
the Earth is flat.
yes, and she says I'm a heretic because I sit in this room with people who believe differently than myself, and so I've been called a heretic by her, and she's
Oh.
unfriended me. But I'm
sorry.
not
That's
losing.
a bummer.
I'm not losing sleep over it. But all that to say is and there's
You're
an
the
ever
pretty
increasing.
hair. I'm the bloody tick. Okay.
What
You're
now?
the hair. I'm the tick.
Okay.
Yeah.
So I got it now. But that's becoming how do you with this the Webb telescope, how can people believe that? They believe that we're making this up, that it's all staged, it's whatever. And I'm like, We disproved that science back with Galileo.
It's easily demonstrable.
Yeah, but the Bible says it's the four corners
And
of the
the
earth,
earth-
and I'm like, that's called poetry, dude.
The
That's
other
poetry.
myth is that Columbus believed that the earth was flat, or that the Greeks believed in an orb. You could go back and read.
Actually, if you read Columbus's writings, he did not believe it was
No.
flat. He
No,
believed
no
it
one
was
did.
no one did. It was
There was
yeah,
a
that's
few
the thing we
pockets
were
of people
told
that
in
did.
school. I feel like I was
Yes,
told
we were.
that they
Mine-
believed.
Yeah.
my history teacher
Wow.
did not teach that. My history teacher taught me that Columbus believed the earth was round, despite what he was taught in school.
Well, the school system I came from, it's amazing they taught anything.
And then I
Mine
taught
was
my
too.
kids that way because I homeschooled. So
I've heard this. Yeah, Columbus was going to
fall off the end of the
no.
earth.
Have
No.
you read his diaries? I read it. They didn't believe that. He wouldn't be able to navigate with the stars and the plumb and the way that he did it.
Yeah, a lot of things
They wouldn't
break
be able to do
real
it.
fast if the earth is flat. A lot of things break.
Well,
real
it's
fast.
funny because she used this meme where she had like 3 different pieces of surveying equipment. My husband's a land surveyor, and he said,
Yeah.
if I have to go out and survey your property, I have to use the curvature of the earth
Sure.
to do it. And he's like, and
Pilots have to figure that in.
I've been on a plane, so I've seen.
They got to figure that in.
I've seen the curvature. But whatever, that's not why we're here.
the
But
earth was-
it is a
Let's get
theory.
back to this. What were you
it
saying?
comes back to infinity.
How do you feel about those that are insistent that at least they should be included into the conversation of the majority that believe in a
Here we go.
orbital
This is
Earth?
fascinating.
This is a side note from him. No, this
you
is a
should,
side note.
accept us
He's
and love
side
us
noting
as
for full
legitimate.
preterism is what he's
At least
doing.
accept us as legitimate, that the Earth may possibly be flat, and not to treat us or ostracize us or
That's a
anything.
Hitler argument, though.
You should
The
bring us
Bi-
all in.
the Bible says that I am to
Bring us all
love.
in.
I'm to love people. I love
And
her.
love flat earthers.
I love her. And if she needed, like you said, if her car went into the ditch, I would help pull
That's
her
right.
out.
That's right.
However, I will not entertain that
Thank you.
theory.
Right. That's where I stand.
Even though like I have no particular passionate and no dog in the preterist fight because obvious reasons. I think it's also unfair. Is from what I can tell, it's unfair to lump preterism in with flat earthers, something that is demonstrably and like laughably false. I'm not sure it fits in that category. That just seems like a what's a bad comparison? What is it? A straw man? Is it a straw man argument?
to the Orthodox,
Like
you
I
know,
understand what you're saying. I just think comparing it to flat earthers is not
Well,
it's
what-
not fair.
From our perspective, when you have every single major creed from the 2nd century onward, all 4 quarters of the earth, billions of souls, every statement, Coptic, Eastern, Roman Catholic, Arabic, it doesn't make any difference. They all state and say the same things over and over again. So it's not just the consensus, it's the overwhelming. It's
Yeah,
and
unfortunately for
here
me,
comes
these are-
here comes
yeah,
a
these are
little
things I
group
don't
of flat
know.
earth, and they say, "Oh no, you're all wrong." It is the same thing because the institutions that Christianity has built have been founded upon. So even the Reformation is based upon the Apostles' Creed. The smaller catechism is chapterized by Calvin's Institute of the Christian Religion is built upon the Apostles' Creed. So they never moved away from that boundary or framework. That boundary and framework has defined what Christendom and historic Christianity is. You can go to the Encyclopedia Britannica, and they're going to go to the Nicene Creed. So you can go anywhere you want to, and all of a sudden a group of people think that they know more than all of that, and they want to be considered as legitimate consideration.
I want to back up
I-
because
my hand says no. I
you're
can't.
fully into things that are just above my head, unfortunately. So let's
Yeah. Oh, I'm
well, yeah, I mean, it's fine. I have no,
mean to do
but
that.
but yeah, I'm just not. I just don't know enough to
So-
have that discussion meaningfully. So I think let's back up and maybe get a little ground here because it's probably where we're going
Yeah.
with the. With
well,
the
he was in
thoughts.
infinity. Do you have something to say before you get back to the infinity?
Well, that argument I understand. And I was watching your debate with Turbeville, Pastor
Stacey
Turbeville.
Turbeville,
Yeah.
yeah.
On that apologetic dogs. I've never.
Jeremiah Nordier.
I don't know
Give a
anything
shout
about
out
that,
to
but
him.
I just YouTube a debate that you did. And I don't think that what you just said is your strongest argument. Okay, you have other arguments
Yeah.
that you made in that particular, and I'm only through the second rebuttal, so like it's a 2.5 hour debate. Like
Yeah, it went on longer than what I
I got
thought.
things to do. Okay, but I was trying to prep for today because I only knew you from your social media posts, which can get quite divisive. And I've actually, from the one you made last night, I've gotten several texts about it overnight and this morning while I was driving and whatever. But you're a stronger maybe not stronger intellectually, but from someone who is not a preterist, a stronger argument would be the one you made about the loving God. If that's your idea of a loving God, it's not a God I want to serve. That was particularly, for me, it was a particularly strong argument.
Of removing evil and removing,
because there is still evil present and there is still demonic.
Very much so.
I mean, I'm not Catholic, but I follow a couple of guys who perform exorcisms, like the most well-known exorcists in the world. There's evil present. There are demons present that they encounter. And so if that is the case, that we are fully in the kingdom, we're fully in the kingdom of God, then why is evil still present? That is probably a stronger argument as far as not being so far over somebody's head who's not a believer.
Yeah, who's not.
Because I'm not a Calvinist, so I'm in a really unique position here. I'm not a Calvinist and not a preterist. So when I was getting text messages this morning from a Calvinist who was trying to use your arguments against you, I was like,
it gets involved.
It does get involved. Like, are you a Calvinist or a 3-point Calvinist? And didn't you call it? Was that Josh Sexton
there's
called?
4-point and 5-point.
Yeah,
2.3.
I'm 2.3. I think I'm 2.5.
So yes, I am. Yeah, I'm a Calvinist. But I'm also.
I don't like the name Calvin.
I don't either. Just like I don't like the name preterist.
Calvin doesn't like the name. He wouldn't like the people running around saying I'm a Calvinist.
Oh no, he probably
that'd be the exact opposite of what he would want.
Yeah,
Right.
I would agree with that.
Are you a Calvinist, Rick Carter? I'm pointing at Rick just for people who are listening.
I don't know. Probably. in the theories,
uncertain.
Well, but it's
hard to escape the sovereignty of God.
TBD.
But also,
they'll take Calvinism, so election, the idea of election. That has in the Westminster Confession of Faith, it's defined as such, and it's right on the money with the Greek meaning of the term. It's God knows the number of those whom He has elected, which can neither be increased nor diminished. Mm-hmm. That's the exact opposite meaning of infinity, which can be increased for infinity. So He doesn't know all.
So we're back
to which
to
you could
infinity.
add one more. To which you could add one more.
Again.
To which you could add one more.
Yeah, you're saying.
So there's no all.
The word that you're playing with me on infinity is meaningless to me. I'm talking about eternal. God is eternal.
Right.
God is everlasting. I'll agree with you on that. That number, none of us know but God. Only God knows the number. Am I wrong?
To which you could add one more.
Only God knows the number.
The number of elect?
You
Is that what you're
can't know
saying?
The number of what?
You can't know an infinite number.
Do you know what the elect is?
No.
Okay.
Yeah,
So
I thought I just said that I'm not talking about infinity anymore.
Yeah.
I'm talking about eternal, the definition you
Right.
just gave.
If
I'm
that's
staying
the
within-
case and he knows the number, then then it is a fixed or a finite number of which can neither be increased nor diminished.
Right.
So
elect-
if that's the case, then you can't have an infinite increase of history or procreation of which God is always saving for infinity. He's always bringing more souls for infinity. So it never ends.
okay, wait.
Hold on. I would like to hear this explanation.
Because
please.
of the Calvinists believe, or whatever you call it, that there are a predetermined amount of souls that God has
Yes.
chosen to save. That is what we're calling the elect. They have been elected. It's
Chosen. The word means chosen. Yeah.
chosen to be a follower, and they can't deny that calling.
Okay.
So there's that's what that's the belief there.
Okay.
So to kind of go, I could see where you didn't know what that word
Yes,
elect
thank you.
meant.
Yeah.
So I just wanted for listeners who may not know what that means. That's what.
Yeah,
that means.
and down through history, there have been debates, of course, in regard to Calvinism and Arminianism. I think it's Jacobius Arminius.
Who would agree with me, by the way?
Who?
Arminius would
agree with you on what?
the number is finite.
Mm-hmm.
That of whom are the elect or the saved, the number is finite.
Mm-hmm.
It's a finite number.
So,
So
if you are,
you're very, very strict on that.
if I'm hearing what you say, both of you,
Uh-huh.
and probably Rick Carter as well, because I'm just trying to stay neutral here, even though I have a particular belief. You believe history has an end, correct? There
Yeah.
will be an end to history as we know it. You believe history has no end. Is that correct?
That's correct.
Okay. Also, Rick Carter, you believe history has no end?
Correct.
Okay. Andy, do you have a particular thought on that? Will the world explode and have an end?
I mean,
or
sure,
is-
the world will end. I don't know if history ends. I don't know. The what do they call it? The heat death of the universe. I think
Heat
if
death,
that's the way
5
it
billion
actually
years
works.
from now, yeah.
Yeah.
heat
then
death? That's a
the-
new one for me.
That's just
The
because
sun's going to
things
explode?
No, things are expanding. Like the whole universe is expanding.
Yeah.
Everything will be so far apart that it will just
Correct.
everything will just like freeze and die.
Correct.
But that would be the end of all life
Human
that
life?
there is. But is that the end of the universe? Kind of no. It's just the end of a lot of others.
Well, history
End
is
of-
just the telling the
That's
story
why
of
I
mankind.
use the definition history as we know it, as we now
Yes,
know it.
gotcha.
So that will not ever end. So child molestation will be for infinity. It'll never end. Never.
That to
Evil
me,
will be forever.
that to me
God is
your
pleased
strongest
that
argument.
child molestation will last for infinity.
that is
Just the logical outcome.
it's not a terrible argument. I don't understand the legs of it, but the argument itself is fine.
Yep.
That's in your debate thus far. When I had looked at it, that's your strongest point. As a person who was abused as a child, it's a horrible thing.
I'll
And
get
to think
over it.
yeah, you'll get over it. But the thought that it's going to go on forever, the Lord is going to continue to
No,
allow
I want
that.
retribution for that. And there will be, in the end, retribution for everything. Everything will be made new and everything will be rectified fully and entirely. The full preterist has no final rectification for anything.
I will say that
Guys, I'm sorry to interrupt you, but guys,
Okay.
listen.
I like
God put the knowledge of good and evil on this planet. Did he not?
for temporarily.
He put it on here.
Well,
Temporarily.
no.
He
Wait a
put it
minute.
here. But he put it here.
But if you
That
go,
which came from his eternity. Am I wrong?
In his mind of what good and evil
Well, did-
is.
did he
but
know what it
wasn't-
would do?
But it wasn't the acts
But did
of it.
God know what it would do?
Temporarily.
well, you say temporarily.
I understand
So
what
it
you
has
mean. You mean
if
that
I
it has
say
a purpose.
temporarily, there's the
Purpose.
word teleology and purpose. So what is the purpose of working all things to the good for those who love Christ Jesus? Well, you don't have one. It's infinite. It goes on. There is no. It's dying and going to heaven. That's not going to work.
Hey, did you
because
hear
God
that? He just did
also-
me. He just did me. He went, I
God-
ain't going to heaven.
yeah.
That's what
He
I
did. He sounded like you.
God also made this thing called earth.
Yeah.
Heaven and earth. Jesus reconciled and is the summation of all things in heaven and earth, so that he might bring all things together in summation to him, for him, by him, in heaven and on earth.
Yes.
You keep forgetting about the earth part. He made heaven and earth.
Mm-hmm.
Yep.
Thy will be done, thy kingdom come on earth as it is in heaven.
Correct.
Right.
This is incarnation. Why did he become flesh? Well, he's uniting. It's both important. And if just one does, the Spirit leaves us hanging out here, then he's not redeemed all things, and I don't want anything to do with him.
Mm-hmm.
He's weak. Can you get rid of evil in your own creation? You can't. Then your Bible is no good even for a bottom of a bird cage. I don't want anything to do with it.
Well, like when you talk about purpose,
Because the
it's
things
same-
that hurt us,
Uh-huh.
the things that hurt us
Mm-hmm.
are things that happen here.
Sure. One of the
When do they
biggest
get
things that I
rectified?
hated as an atheist before I even became a believer was that you've heard this argument a million times.
Yeah.
If he's a loving God, then ... What else? If he's a loving God, then why so much pain? Why so much suffering? Why all this? Why? Why?
If it has a
why did you
temporary
make
function
it?
to
Why
it.
did you make it, knowing that man would fall, so that you would send your second Adam in order
Right.
to that was the argument that was taught to me from a child. Like why?
It's a
Why?
good argument.
It is a good argument, but I think that also drives home the point, which is purpose and choice, which belongs to God, and that's where it starts.
It starts there, but if he never ends it, if he never consummates that, then he started something that he can't he can't end.
But see, by the very nature of the word consume, the consummation of things, right?
Right.
So if you have an everlasting fire, of everlasting,
Right.
then that means that fire is always contained wherever God is. That it's always contained, but it is always existing. Correct?
So what you're saying, or what you're trying to argue for, is that sin will never have an end.
Sin is covered by Jesus Christ. That is the end of
So
the good of evil tree. The
don't
good and
get-
evil tree.
Don't get too upset about evil on the earth then.
Of course you can be upset about it.
Why?
What do you mean?
Well, it doesn't mean anything, really.
It does mean something.
It doesn't serve any purpose.
Christ died so that we could be forgiven of it.
I still sin.
Yes,
I thought
But
he
is
took it
it-
away from me.
he did,
Why do I still sin?
because he covers it for you. Because
So I
you
can
are
go ahead and, oh, great.
what?
I can go out and sin then.
That's not what Paul says.
Why not?
Paul says that wherever sin is, the grace abounds all
But
the
it
more.
doesn't
But
matter.
should you do? Then you're arguing with Paul, not me.
I,
No, am I wrong?
in my view, my sin is temporary, and it works towards a goal of good in which I will be a new creature, raised immortal, consummate. In your view, this is never consummated. It rots in the ground. It has no meaning or purpose to it. It's never raised from the dead.
Its meaning and
it's
purpose is
meaningless.
within what God made it for. That's the meaning.
to rot into the ground.
The body
Yeah, to rot.
to decay.
So
and the Son of
this
God
gets-
never saw decay. The
this
Son
gets
of God never saw decay.
So this gets to the other question, because all these things lead to one thing. They all connect together. So you bring up the resurrection of Jesus, who is obviously bodily raised from the dead, which God raised him bodily from the dead, I have no idea, because he just, according to Don Preston and Mike Sullivan and Dave Curtis and all the rest of them, Jesus shed his body upon the ascension. Because if you have a body going and ascending into heaven, glorified and immortal, then that tells me that God can glorify a human body and make it immortal, which is the definition of what resurrection glorification is for him. And if it is for him, then it also is for us that are in
But
Christ.
Does he always have to glorify a body for it to be with him?
Well, he's glorified Jesus Christ.
Well, he did, right.
Right.
But does he always have to?
He's the first fruit of the harvest.
But does he always have to glorify
So if
the
you
body
plant-
to be with him?
If you harvest an apple, if you get a
I
first
get it, but
fruit,
you're not answering my question.
if you get an apple in their first fruit, what are you going to get in the
And
harvest?
that still doesn't answer the point. Does he have
If
to
his body is glorified, and we are to be made in his image and like him and conform to his image, which is the ultimate goal,
But does God always have to glorify a
then
body
he
to be
has
with him?
failed if he does not glorify
No.
this body.
You didn't answer a question.
I think that sort of was a yes.
Yes.
That was a yes.
God is a failure.
Yeah.
If he doesn't glorify this body, he's
So-
a failure.
well, then-
so by
and he doesn't
extension-
exist, by the way.
So
Yeah.
then
Not a God.
He's
did
not
he,
a God at all.
but
Nothing
he-
I want anything to do with.
he never said anything about glorifying Enoch when he took him.
He didn't glorify Enoch. No, where does it say he glorified Enoch?
Exactly. Does he have to glorify a body to be with him?
Enoch is not in a body with God. He didn't take his body with him. Enoch died. Hebrews 11. After he mentions all these, and then he says, all these died, not having received that which was promised to them. All these would go back.
All right, so
That
is that
would be Enoch and Elijah both. They both died.
well, then that's a contradiction, right?
No,
Because Genesis said Enoch did not die. God took him.
it says that he walked with the Lord and God took him.
Yes, it did
Right.
not die.
I thought it says, and he was no more. I think that's all.
There was
it
no
says.
more.
and he
Right.
was no
Doesn't
more.
say anything about his body, what happened to his body. Doesn't say anything like that. But we know if he was raised and glorified and all of the rest of it, then he beat Jesus to it. And so Jesus
gonna
didn't
say,
need to be
that's
the first.
pre-
So
that's
Jesus
pre-Christ.
was already.
Yeah, I mean, that's pre-Christ.
He's already.
Well, I understand that.
So Jesus is first.
I'm not degrading the fact that what he did for Christ was absolutely special, and that he glorified him above everybody else, right? Because he made him lower for a short period of time, and then he made him more than
Yeah.
everything else. That was a part of glorifying him. But for Enoch and Elijah, he did not glorify their bodies to be with him. He doesn't have
No, I
to.
believe
He
we die,
chose
and as
to.
spirits, we're with the Lord in heaven. As a spirit, we're with
Yes.
the Lord in heaven.
But my question was,
Our
does
bodies
he
are in the
have to
ground.
glorify?
But to be raised from the dead, your body has to be glorified. And Enoch was not raised from the dead. There's nothing that says that he was raised from the dead.
Right.
So Jesus is the firstborn who raised human being immortal from the dead. That's actually the problem, because people can die and believe in God, and God forgives their sins, and they love him, and Abraham loves, and he's a friend, and God's talking to him, and they're talking to him. They're having direct communication. His spirit is in them. Abraham is regenerated. He believes in the Lord. He believes in what God says and all the rest of it. He dies. His spirit goes to heaven. But God promised Abraham land forever.
Right.
He told him specifically, I will give you, singular, this land forever, for eternity. Well, when is he going to get that?
He didn't.
He didn't. Not to this day, he hasn't.
But his seed got it.
It's to him and his seed, but specifically to him, singular, to him, to you, Abraham. He's speaking directly to him. And then he says, and your seed. So when is Abraham himself going to get the land that God promised? Well, Paul sees this in Romans 4:13, where it is not through the law that the heirs of the promise to inherit the whole world. Where does Paul make that jump that Abraham is going to inherit the whole world? Well, he's looking at the sun, the moon, the stars, wherever your feet step, that I will give to you forever. And Abraham's looking at it and thinking, I will die. There's no way nations are coming out of me in my lifetime. But God said it. I believe it. God will have to raise the dead. He would have to recreate all of this for eternity if he's going to give this to me for eternity. I'm looking for a better. And Abraham died and did not receive that which God promised to him. But God promised to him, and God will answer that promise. This becomes the hope of resurrection and new life and eternity, when God's going to rectify and make all things right.
It's already his. If I give it to you, it's already yours.
He's already in. Abraham believed that he was already a father of many nations, even though he didn't even have a son.
Yeah, it kind of jumps outside of the physical, spiritual discussion, really. It's more of
He promised him land.
It's a physical thing that he's saying.
Yeah.
What's the
Promised
conversation
land.
we have about Christ? He was already the king, but he wasn't. He didn't have the possession of it yet.
Yeah, like we were talking. This wasn't on the podcast. This was on a conversation this morning. We were talking about how, Christ was the king. The king was riding in on a donkey when he came into the city.
Already king.
But the coronation,
Yes.
or the glorification when he sits at the right hand of the Father, hadn't taken place
So that
yet.
would have been the
Right,
same
right.
concept with Abraham. He already owned the land. It was his. He wasn't there yet.
Yeah, and then
And it's to be given back to him.
and I think that's I think that's the part about the Bible and philosophy and everything else that's the most difficult thing for me, is that not everyone has the ability like you do to be able to sit down and fully study and have the time, or even the brain to be able no, seriously, to be able to do that. Let's just be honest. Not everybody has your brain, and not everybody can do what you do. And so the relationship that the common man might have with a person, if they see something in the scriptures and they begin to believe it, then, like you said this morning, do you mind to read his Facebook post? Would you grab that and read
that's
that?
fine.
Sure.
No, it's fine. I mean, this is all part of it. Your definition of infinity, I think, is correct. As far as eternal, I would agree with that. I have no problem with that. I think that it's, and I understand what you're saying in regard to the full consummation of things, to be able to, what is
Rectification of
Christ
everything.
presenting to the Father exactly if it all ends in 80-70? That's what you're saying. Like, okay, this is all over spiritualized, I imagine, is what you're seeing, right?
Entirely so, yeah.
And that's what, when you got to the John 6 and that jumped out at you and you went to your professor and was like, hey, what is this? I wanted to get into that. That was my first question. We never got there.
We'll
So
get
let's-
there.
Yeah. But
Okay, so you've had quite a bit posted on your Facebook page this morning.
I can stir 'em up.
Jeremiah Nortier just posted on your Facebook page.
He's
and
a
it's
busy
fun,
boy.
That's funny. You
I'm a
just
busy
shouted
boy.
out, but he can't hear us right now. But okay, so it says, let me scroll down. Oh gosh, okay. All right, so this was said last night, has had 137 comments. So, if I were to embrace full preterists as brothers or sisters in Christ with total allowance and acknowledging their quote unquote version of the Bible as simply quote unquote another view to be quote unquote tolerated, then I would say I have no beef with universalists,
Yeah.
Pelagianists, Unitarians, liberals, etc., dispensationalists, Seventh-day Adventists, etc., are all to be tolerated without any real rebuke. And with this, I would have to also say, quote, the creeds, end quote, don't matter at this point, other than simply a relic of history of what some used to believe.
Yeah. Take them or leave them.
How could that be true for dispensationalists?
Oh, they love Jesus.
No. Well, so do full preterists.
So do Unitarians. I've got 3 Unitarian friends that
All
would
he
give you
really
the
said
shirt
in
off
that
their
is that
back.
about
Nicest
having a
people you'd
beef.
ever meet in your life.
You have a beef. That's all you really said in that, is that you just have a beef with them.
I wouldn't have a beef if I accepted full preterism as just another
But you don't.
harmless view.
And they don't accept you and so they have a beef
Then
with you.
I
Some
wouldn't
of
have
them
a
do.
beef with
Yeah.
Unitarians
Well,
or
Well, and see, that's where we
Universalists.
differ.
I've got
See,
friends
I
that are
don't have a
Universalists.
problem with Sam Frost's view.
No, not at
Yeah.
all.
Because the reason why I don't is because I don't know all things. I am still studying this, much like everyone else. But when I began to see the fulfillment of prophecy, it took me into a whole new world in my mind, which it did you too.
Sure.
And that is an exercise that is, I think it's worthwhile as an
Study it
exercise
out.
to study it out, to
Yeah.
show yourself approved, a workman that needeth not be ashamed, rightly dividing the word of truth. Not the way that Schofield divided the word, the way that God meant for us to divide the word. So as we continue to study, a dispensationalist who does not believe that the temple mattered when it was destroyed in any fashion, and I don't know if that's where you stand. The destruction of the temple in AD 70 is something that Jesus said in Matthew 24 would happen in their generation. If you don't want to tie up all of the other things like the rest of the full preterists, don't. But at least acknowledge the fact that the temple was destroyed just like he said it would.
Yeah.
He did in the book.
But dispensationalists, not all of them agree. They take and say everything is
But that's-
future.
Dispensationalism is a new kid on the block.
Yes, but it's
I'm in-
considered orthodox.
I'm in.
Well, I agree with you on the Orthodox, but most dispensationalists don't have a clue about 70 AD.
No, and they don't even. Most
It's like another year, like a birthday. It's crazy.
I have less problems with dispensation, but they've got like Seventh Day Adventism, who I don't have any problems with. My stepfather was Seventh Day Adventist. I don't
Yeah,
problems.
but I would
think
agree with you to have
was
less
great.
problems because they agree more with you in your current view, right?
Yeah, and the dispensationalist believes in a new heavens and a new earth, resurrection of the body.
So-
They believe in all of those affirmations that unite all churches.
Do
So
you
within
consider-
that, we have our little fights with each other, but
you
they're
consider
still
yourself
in those bounds.
a post-millennialist? Is that
No,
what you?
not at all.
No.
I
What do
used
you-
to be.
Do you have a label?
It'd be all millennial, I guess.
Amelie.
Augustinian, so Calvin, I would guess that kind of stuff.
So let's
Luther,
before we get into your amillennial, because
Thomas Aquinas.
we're going to get there. But so
We
let's
promise.
no,
Maybe
we
tomorrow.
are. I want my first question answered. John 6. Something in John 6 did
was-
something for you.
It leaped out of the page dealing with the infinity thing, and then with my professors bringing them back, and then they were bringing me back a wealth of
All right. So what in John
material.
6?
So John 6 is, I will raise them up in the last day. All who believe in me, whosoever believes in me, whoever whoever is drawn to me by the Father, on and on. He says it 4 times there. I will raise them up in the last day. And that's either 70 AD, which means we're not being raised today. I asked Michael Miano this in the debate, and his eyes looked like something stuck in the headlights. I said, when are you going to be raised?
Mm-hmm.
He thought for a second. Says, do you believe? And I said again to him, do you believe in Jesus? Yes. Were you drawn to Jesus by the Father? Yes. So when will you be raised? I've already been raised. Then your last days already happened? Well, no, that was to them in 70 AD. Oh, then you're not going to be raised. And then finally he admitted, that passage does not apply to me.
Who
And
is
you can go
them?
back and you can watch it yourself. You could have heard a pin drop in that church when he said that. That verse does not apply to me.
Mm-hmm.
Who is
And
that?
that's when I said, I don't even need to, my work is done. That's it. This whole section that Jesus is talking about resurrection, all of those great passages about being drawn to the Father, anyone that's drawn to the Father cannot resist, and all those great, that's just to them in that first century, to the Jews, and that's it. It's to no one else.
Mm-hmm.
It's written to them. And if you're going to apply that kind of hermeneutic, which they do, then you can't blame groups like Israel Only coming along and saying that's who it was written to and that's who it applies to, and then that's it. So all this nonsense about going to church and denominations and deacons and elders and priests and all of your silly debates and everything else, you can't solve it because you don't have a direct voice of God speaking directly to an apostle telling you what is directly the word of God like Moses. None of us do. All that we have is our opinions and interpretations. Let it go, man. There's no more church. It's done. It's been fulfilled in the time when God spoke and poured out his spirit, but that's it. So the rest of it,
Which
get rid of it.
And some full preterists do go that far, right?
Can you blame them?
Well, that's what you're saying. They go
It
that
was
far
tempting
because
for me to go that far because I thought, here's the solution. 70 AD is the solution to ecclesiology. We can tear down all of our buildings now and build them into orphanages and actually do some good with them than have some guy stand up behind the pulpit claiming he's speaking the word of God, which clearly he's not.
So that's what.
All I'm getting from him is his opinion.
A lot
That's
of this
it.
seems to be very functional.
So what you're saying is like
Very much so.
once you saw that, then all of your arguments began to crumble,
Yeah.
and that's really where it started for you.
It just one after the other. I thought,
I want to get this in. This,
boy.
this pertains to where we are, I swear. So I don't see with infinity, if you believe that God, created everything and is all-knowing to whatever point, that's a different argument, obviously, created like light, not the sun, but light, everything, knows everything.
Mm-hmm.
I don't see that it's that difficult a logical jump to be like, he knows everything that ever will be. Like, I don't see
Well, he
that
does.
as a difficult. So then he does know. Like, then is that not the antithesis of
Well,
the
there's-
infinity argument?
The definition of infinity is that which you can add one more. You can always add to it.
So, okay.
Whereas
so,
if God knows all, there's nothing you can add to it. There's
So-
no increase of it whatsoever.
so can I say that God knows everything that ever will be forever?
Yeah.
Okay. So
Yeah, but
that's
it's contained. You can't
Well,
add to
yeah.
that.
I guess that's contained, but functionally, it does the thing I want it to do. Which is
For
to
us,
say
that's
that-
how Augustine made the difference between God as eternal. He defined it just as that. We're not going to understand this, but he defined eternity different from infinity. They made the distinction because God knows all things from beginning to end, and so everything is self-contained. That's not infinity. Over here, you can't. You can always add. It's for infinity. Here, you can't, and so they made the distinctions between quantity of knowledge and quality of knowledge. And this is mathematics too. So
Yeah.
they made scientists do the same. They wrestle with the same problems. So
that is a
like
very
black hole
good
theory,
point.
too,
By
string
the way.
theory. So
He's
they made the
he's
distinction
making
between
an incredibly
eternity and
strong argument.
and
That's a
infinity.
great argument, actually. That's a really good argument.
I haven't heard a response to it. And what you just said is the distinction that they, if you have a being that knows everything to which nothing can be added to, that's not infinity. But it solves the problem of infinity.
Mm-hmm.
And then they left it at that. So Augustine was pleased with that because we're not God. I don't understand.
Sure.
I don't understand.
His ways are higher than our ways. His
I
thoughts
don't
are
know.
higher than our
So-
thoughts.
Right.
So, Andy,
I'm a worm here.
We had a discussion yesterday talking about trying to solve nothing, right? Prove nothing.
Oh yeah. You
But it is a good
can't-
argument.
You can't prove a negative.
Well,
No,
can-
it is a very good argument, but I was going to say something, but I didn't finish. I'll get to it.
Rick, that mic's kind of like pointing up here. Can you just bring it down a little bit? Like
Mine?
down physically.
Oh.
Yeah, there you go.
Instead
Perfect.
of rubbing on your
So
face.
is-
The face of radio.
Yeah.
We can't hear
face
your,
of radio
we can't hear
shoving
your
on stage.
eyeballs.
Yeah.
So basically saying, and I'm kind of asking you this: if we cannot prove
The non-existence of a thing. You cannot definitively prove the non-existence.
well, then
of a thing.
can we actually prove infinity?
Oh, infinity is a concept. It's not a thing.
Well, isn't negative? Wouldn't be the non-existence of something be a concept as well?
I mean, I don't think that's a concept. I think the non-existence of a thing is not a thing.
The thing that
Correct.
infinity is taking into consideration is all things, numbers, space.
But can you actually prove it? No different than saying something
You
doesn't
couldn't- you
exist
could
or
never-
infinity. You can't prove either one.
Well, okay.
You can prove
Okay.
infinity because you can always add
No,
one more.
You can't.
Hold on.
He's right.
Yeah.
You can't. Well, you can. You can. The
That's
way
the
to
problem.
prove infinity
Is to
by
add another one. But then once you add it, then that is something.
Well, see, that's
right. But then
okay.
Right,
that's
right.
the
hope-
Infinity is a concept. It's not a thing.
Plenty of books written on
Right.
this. By
So
whatever.
it's not
Boggle your
quite the
mind.
same as looking for a car.
Those freaking Greeks and their infinity. So if you get,
Yeah.
so
Yes.
here's the thing:
Right.
from everlasting to everlasting, forever and ever. Like that's the +1.
Yeah.
From everlasting to everlasting to everlasting to everlasting, forever and ever and ever. So as a Christian, as a young Christian, when I believe, like, okay, I believe in Jesus, I want to be saved from my sins, I have that. Then what do I receive? You receive everlasting life. That's amazing. Does that go on forever? Yes. Maybe not.
Now there is
Well,
a
okay.
branch.
Maybe not.
Can we say that
It's
forever,
cyclic.
eternity is a time statement? We like our time statements, right? And infinity is a material statement. It's a material thing.
Right.
You add one to something, but forever is a time statement
But
where
with
infinity
quality.
is not.
Let's imagine
eternal
God as a
quality of
bubble.
time.
Let's make God a bubble
and
for
I'm
just
doing
a
the
second.
infinity sign, by the way.
Yeah.
Like, y'all can't see me.
Yeah.
I thought you were doing like, girl, whatever. No. So imagine God as a bubble. Everything that ever will be, ever, anytime, ever, is always going to be inside that bubble, which is God. Always.
Yeah.
Always. So the word I am, the name I am, is the self-existent one, the one that will never end. He always will
In
be.
being, in
or
his
will he
being,
be?
yeah.
Or will he end? If he doesn't end, then
Find
what?
out next time. I'm kidding.
Yeah. So what's it going to be? Like, does it last forever and ever, or
His
does it have a
being
stop?
His being ends.
Right. I guess
Or
my
does-
point
his
is
being
that
does not end, but it is a self. We would define Trinity as self-contained being.
but everything lives and breathes and operates
Is-
from within
right.
inside him.
So now
Is
there was an
he-
interesting
Is
development
he infinite?
with Alfred North Whitehead, who developed what was called process theology, and they were incorporating
I'm sort
these
of a
ideas.
process theologian.
Yeah.
Sorry, inside joke.
Tiziana Service
Well-
says that all the time.
They were bringing in. So Whitehead's a brilliant mathematician, brilliant
Yeah.
physicist. So he's bringing in these ideas and relating them into the ideas of God. And so God is in process of becoming. God is always becoming. So he's growing, he's becoming, he's learning. He's always adding on. So he was adding. This is called process theology, which was rejected by all Roman Catholic, Eastern Orthodox, Protestant theologians. They rejected it because it was an expanding God. God doesn't know the future.
Mm-hmm.
The future has a infinite way it may play out. We don't know all the causalities that can go on, and neither does God. So
According to
you
the process
might be
theologians.
saved, or you might not. Maybe, I don't know. Today you are, but tomorrow you might not be. So
You're still speaking from a process theologian's.
that's
you're not
if you
saying that from
If
yourself.
you
You're
started
saying it
going
from
down
them.
that route with them, because they're already doing that. God is becoming. So
But the Bible
the
says
full
God
preterist-
never changes.
right.
He is the
And that's-
same
can't be
yesterday,
infinity.
today, and
right. That's
forever.
the exact opposite. Exact opposite. So if God,
Hey, Rick,
God
we're
does
starting
not
to feel
change.
like Solomon over here. Everything
It
is
is-
meaningless.
Yes. When you
Well,
when
I
you,
Yes.
when you
There
apply
comes
it-
the point,
when you apply a
Solomon makes a
concept
point.
that you cannot prove to a provable conversation, everything starts to begin to break down
Yeah.
because you're going into stuff that you can't construct.
Well,
I can construct infinity. That's the problem with it. I can always add one
You
more.
can't
to
just
it.
takes
That's
forever.
That's
It
the
just takes
frustration.
forever.
You can't prove it.
That's
Let's-
the whole
You
frustration
can't
of it.
prove it because you don't know if you can add one more to it. If it's available to add one more, you think you can, but you don't know. You
but
can't
even
prove it,
But that breaks the definition of the word.
doesn't it?
Yeah, it's a
It's
concept.
cyclic.
Right.
I
It's
just
the
said
same
it's
thing-
cyclic.
It's the same
cyclic.
thing as nothing.
You
It's-
can't
what is
stop
we
it?
it.
What is
certainly-
it called? We're
It's a- Right.
circumlocuting. We're
the Mobius
we're going
strip.
around.
So when
And I was
Jesus
talking-
says, "All who have been given to me, I will raise them
At
in the last day."
So last night I was talking.
All.
The last day.
I was
what?
talking with my husband about this
it has
and
to
about
be
what
all.
today was coming and I said I believe Occam's razor. The simplest solution
Yes.
is the solution. The simplest answer is the
Generally
solution.
the
Theologian.
Generally, the best solution.
Or keep it simple, stupid. I mean, KISS. I mean, that's what it stood for, right? When the band, but
Oh yeah.
No.
I'm just kidding.
That's not what it meant.
It's not what it meant. But Jesus
Gene
even said
Simmons would be upset. if
not
you
to
said
equate
that.
Jesus
Just so
with
you know,
Gene
I am
Simmons.
licking this microphone right now with
Or-
my.
That's not the
Okay,
name
okay.
of it.
All right, everybody. Okay, hold on. All right, that was just like too much crosstalk. Sarita, please.
Or not to equate Jesus with Occam or KISS, though I'm sure that he enjoyed their music. But Jesus even says the gospel, the concept of who I am and my kingdom is so simple a child can understand it. And what we're doing is we're very Gnostically making this into this really complicated situation and argument where I don't think Jesus intended it for it to go. Like,
There's a lot of complications in the Bible.
I'm 49 years old. And what I hear, I can't wrap my mind around it. But when I read my Bible, it seems simple to me. And I know I don't have a theology degree, but I can read I have the Holy Spirit, so I can read the Bible. My gift is teaching. So I have a way of absorbing the word and having a discussion with it. But I try to keep it simple because I teach ninth grade girls.
Right.
I try to keep it simple so that they can understand it. But what we're talking about with infinity and forever,
I'd
and
rather
that-
not talk about it. The Bible
that
has
is
talks about an
so
end,
complicated.
and all that are his will be saved and raised in the last day. That to me is so simple to understand. There will be an end when? I don't know.
Okay, so but
And
when you
all
were
who are going to be raised? All.
And
Okay,
the-
but when you
that's
were
simple.
in
But an end of
preterist-
what?
but when you were in
This
preterism,
complicates it.
but when you were in
That complicates
preterism,
What I just said?
how did
Yeah.
you view John 6 when you were in preterism? Did you
We
just sweep
didn't.
it under the rug?
Interestingly enough, Max King doesn't write on it. Don Preston wasn't writing on it. I went to search for it when I finally began to put these things together. Keep in mind, we were still doing cutting edge stuff 2004, 2005, 2006. So a lot of stuff wasn't written on. We're a new kid on the block. So I'm writing a systematic theology. I'm trying to bring in all of the other aspects of Christian history so that full preterism becomes a worldview. It's not just what's full preterism. Well, it's Josephus in 70 AD. Well, there's more to life than Josephus in 70 AD. We got to talk about death. We got to talk about crime. We've got to talk about economy. We've got to talk about all the worldview things that made Christendom. And one of them that made Christendom is the Greeks had a cyclical, endless time that burned out finally into a purposeless conflagration. That was their meaninglessness of life. It just kind of burned out at the end, somewhere in the time of
That was their Ecclesiastes.
meaningless, cyclical, meaningless spiraling out of and no control whatsoever. Here comes Augustine with God, and time is linear, and it has a beginning and it has a purpose, a teleology. It has an end. History means something. It's going somewhere. There's an aim, a goal, an end. There's a field post. There's a line to be crossed, a consummation. Everything now means something because it's all heading towards the good of the consummate God. Well, this exploded the Greek world. This idea.
It was revolutionary.
It was unbelievably revolutionary. Nobody was thinking like this. And so with his idea, and all of our novels in the West are a beginning, a middle, and an end. Where did we get that from? We got that from the Bible. We got it from Augustine. Everything changed in Western. That's why they say Christendom and Western Christianity and civilization go hand in hand. Well, I can build on a concept of progressive beginning, and I'm progressing towards the goal line. Got to get to the finish line. Well, full preterism says the finish line, that's back here. We've already reached it.
Rick, were you gonna
Doesn't
say
work.
something just a couple minutes ago, Rick?
No, I just said the end of what?
Okay.
The end of what? Like, let's end this, and we'll get
The
into
end
it
of
in the
this
next
podcast.
episode. Yeah, let's end this.
This
yeah,
podcast will never end.
it goes on
the
infinity.
infinity-
Add one
the
more.
infinity
Add one more.
podcast.
It goes on and on, my
Yeah.
friend.
no, but
It goes on forever.
Dr. Frost, thank you so
Oh,
much
yeah.
for giving
Thank
us
you.
your time and being here.
Yes.
For letting me have your time.
It means a lot to me that you're here. And Rick Carter,
Yes.
Andy Bishop,
Oh,
Yes, sir.
yeah.
Sarita the Edge. Edgerton, thanks for being here. Thanks for coming all the way up here, even though I didn't buy you breakfast.
That's all right.
I will buy you
Yeah.
lunch. I'll buy you lunch.
I have a joke.
Oh,
Ooh.
let's hear
You
it.
told me to bring a joke.
You got 7 of them? I only want one for now.
I got this one.
All right.
So there was a guy named Juan, and he was a clam digger. That's what he did for a living.
I love it already.
Okay. And so, but when he was in the process, he found this otter who was injured, and he nursed this otter back to health. And he and this otter became really good friends. And the otter was the greatest clam digger. He could go down and get the clams and bring them back up. So this man knocks on Juan's wife's door, his esposa, and he says to the wife, I would like to hire Juan to do some clam diving for me. And she said, well, it's $500. And he was like, why so expensive? And she said, well, he has this otter that does it for him, so you have to pay for both of them. He goes, well, I just want to hire Juan. I'll give him $350 to go do this for me. And she said, well, you can't have Juan without the otter.
I had no idea where that
Where's
was
the
going.
Me
snare drum
either.
and rim shot
Yeah.
symbol there?
I just kept thinking.
I have a sound. I used to throw that in sometimes. I haven't used it in a while.
You ought to just do the laughing donkey. Anyway, well, thanks everybody for being here, and we will talk to you guys again next time on the Burros of Berea. Peace out.
Bye-bye, y'all.
Hey guys, this is Rick from the Burros of Berea. Do you know how much blood, sweat, and tears it takes to make a podcast? None. But that doesn't mean that it doesn't cost a lot. And so if you guys don't mind, if anybody would like to give to help us with these episodes, it would be great. We'll put out even more content. And if you go to our Patreon page, just search for the Burros of Berea, you'll get extra notes, extra episodes, and it's pretty much free. $1 gets you a lot. Thanks, guys.
You are listening to Dr. Sam Frost Fridays. And cut.
I think we should be on NPR or something.
Funny.
Yeah.
Tiny desk.
Who was that?
Oh, I thought you were-
tiny desk.
I thought you were going to do the Frosty Friday thing.
Sweaty
I just said
balls.
Dr. Sam Frost
It's
Friday.
Frosty Friday.
No, I just asked him. I didn't want to say that. It sounds
okay.
if you say Frosty
I
Friday,
did bring
it's
you a
a
water,
joke.
Dr. Frost. You're welcome.
But it could be.
Okay.
You know how we are,
Yeah.
especially with full preterists
It
talking
sounded
about
good
Frost.
now.
It's like, oh, you betcha he's Frosty.
Do you play congas? Is congas kind of a thing on your list?
Yes.
You do play congas? Oh God, there's almost like I almost want to try to force you to play congas on a song if we have like 15 extra minutes after this is done.
Would you be willing to do that?
If I could play, I mean,
you'd
I'm
have
not
to hear
a.
the song and see if anything occurs to
Yeah.
you. Of course, not like you'd have to see if it inspired you even a little.
Play, monkey.
Dance monkey.
But if you hear it and
That's
if
that
you
monkey
hear it,
business.
yeah,
It's
and it
dust,
sounds
ladies.
like without struggle, you have like some simple idea. To
I
put
could
down
listen
with-
to the song.
Right.
Yeah.
You'd have to obviously, like you say, you'd have to hear it and see if you're even a little bit moved to,
Andy,
to put something on
what
it.
instruments do you play?
Badly or goodly? Because if
More
if,
than I.
if you want to know badly, then it's like
Every instrument.
almost.
Except the bass. This dude is a bass.
Yeah, I
Phenom.
actually play bass, but I know how to play basically anything with strings.
What do you play?
I can play the piano with this
She's a
hand.
singer,
I can play the
apparently.
piano with this hand, but I cannot play the piano with these hands together. And I can sing.
She has a
I haven't
beautiful
heard her
voice.
sing yet, but Rick says she has a great voice.
Dude.
I'm an alto.
Yeah. I'm a
I sing
tenor.
a solo.
If you can sing, that's great.
I
I'm
sing
solo.
10 or 12 miles from the church. Bam. I'm a solo backup. I sing solo
Solo.
backup in the woods. Y'all can't be hearing me.
That's perfect. That's
That's-
exactly how I would mix you. Actually, that's not true. Rick's a pretty good piano player. I don't know what else he does, but I definitely know he plays piano.
I play, well, which one? Badly or goodly? So I play.
Well, goodly enough. Let's
yeah,
go with that.
I play the guitar as a rhythm guitarist. I just
I play the
strum. I know
guitar.
Sure.
the guitar chords in different ways, you know?
I know all four of the chords.
Exactly. I know all the chords.
You can get a guitar.
Kind of like my
we'll
dance
make up
moves. I can show you both of my dance moves,
Predator
right?
Yeah.
But anyway.
Predator metal?
Predator metal. Yeah. So we're good?
Oh, yeah, definitely.
All right.